Welcome to another Sonic Lab. Today we're looking at the Teenage Engineering KOII Sampler Composer, 64 megabytes. This is a new device. Not totally new. I've been trying to get around to reviewing it for a while, but Super We've got in the way. But essentially it's sort of based on the concept of the original pocket operators, which were little tiny calculator-based sort of size things. Very fiddly, very affordable, and quite a decent range of them. Lots of people really dug them. The thing about this guy is it's a completely new machine. It's kind of some of the brains of that, but sort of multiplied. So we've got 64 megs of samples. We've got 4 groups of sequencer tracks. Each track has 12 sequences in it. Each of the samples can be up to 20 seconds long, can be in stereo. It's it's sort of geared around is making sort of performance. It's a performative instrument. And not only that, but it's actually teenage engineering, and teenage engineering is normally incredibly expensive. And this is priced at a far more reasonable €299 €/dollars, which, I mean, yes, you might say it's still expensive, but actually I don't think so, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But first, obviously you'll see the style here looks very much like a kind of old school calculator, and as it happens, I have one of the very old school calculators here. This is an Ibico 124S, and you can see similarities with it, just the sort of colour scheme, and I mean, not identical, but some really nice stuff. There's also something that's worth looking at. This screen here is very vibrant, so you might notice that, you know, I'm playing here. This is the real-time update, but if I bring in some of these insert effects, you can start to see kind of the amount of all basically little windows. They've been very clever in that they've had sort of little icons printed and just have lights behind them, and they're using things like the fader that has an indicator here, and these knobs have indicators here. It's a very sort of well thought out and nicely designed interface. Okay, I mean, the original shipping version of these came out, and they had a few problems with the faders, and I will confess, I mean, I probably see the fader here is quite, you know, it's a flimsy thing, but I think it was a packaging issue. I haven't had any problems with this one. Have a little look closer at the sort of the whole unit. It's very thin, it's made of plastic, it has a kind of Lego-like quality. Built-in speaker. In fact, if I pop this as well, you can see there's sort of little points for Lego. I think these are sort of compatible. And if you look here, all the buttons are very sort of satisfyingly clacky, and they do have a certain amount of velocity sensitivity and pressure, and you can see that if we go into this sort of, you can see that there's pressure on these things. They will also, these generally are triggering the internal sounds, but we can also hook up external MIDI to this. In fact, I was doing that in the intro where I have the Typhon coming and playing a lead line, and that's where this sort of really kind of comes to life, because we can record MIDI into it. But before we get going, a couple of things to mention. When this first came out and I was beginning to review it, there was no way of backing up samples, because at the moment you drag them via a sort of web interface into the unit, or you sample them into there, and that was that. Now there's actually some beta software which allows you to back up the entire memory of this thing, which is a big thumbs up, because that was one of my criticisms getting ready, and when I've come back to it, that now seems to be, at least in beta, available. So looking at the way the memory is structured, basically there are 9 songs that are the sort of global oversight. Each song has the sample assignments and the sequencer data and whatnot. So loading a song, you press main. I'm in song, that's in scene, so I would press and hold 1, for instance. That loads the song. Or song 2, loads quite fast. Or song 3. Oh, loads of reverb on that one. So yeah, and then inside that song there are 4 main groups, A, B, C and D. Group A has 12 sequencer tracks in it, so in this instance it sounds like I've got loads of effects on there, so I'll just... So each of these pads has a sound assigned to it. I can assign sounds very simply and straightforward. There is some sound editing, we'll get onto that later. So coming back to the main, so there we've got 12 tracks, so in this case we've got a kit. Next group, another 12 sounds. These seem to be basses, but what we could do with these is, rather than just have, we could go let's have that one. I can take that sound and now I press keys, and now that sound is sort of spread over the keyboard, but only for that sequencer track. So that means I can have effectively 12 individual sort of sequencer lines in each group. So one for each of these tracks, whether it just be a one-shot sample or some sort of pitch triggered sample. And remember, that means I can use that also to record external MIDI. So I can have 12 external MIDI channels, I suppose, in each of these groups. So that means we've got a lot of potential data here. 12 tracks, 12 tracks, 12 tracks, 12 tracks. If we didn't use any of the internal samples, what's that? It says 4 12s, 48 track samples of up to 99 bars each. Pretty impressive, right? Now I can press and hold and I can select which pattern I want to play back on this. So I have A08 on the A group and B05, C6, etc, etc. Now all of these means that, you know, these could be different lengths and different whatevers. Doesn't really make any difference. So there's another layer of memory as well. So if I come back to the beginning, these are scene memories, and pressing and holding will just mean that I can store what is assigned to each of these. So for instance, in this scene I've got A10, B4, C4, B5. So if I like, say I like this, I'm happy with this, I'm going to say, right, I'm going to copy that, shift, commit, will create a new scene which will start me, it will also duplicate the patterns. So that means now I can go, I don't know, we can record some more stuff, and I can show you a couple more features. So I'm going into record mode. Actually, I don't want to use that. That looks a bit silly. So I'll just erase that pattern. Start again. Oh, I'm in keys mode. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm just going to go. I've got a 1-bar pattern here, but I could increase the length of that, which would be a stop, and I press, I think I do that, don't I? Length 2, so 4, right, and I'll add those 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've now created a new pattern, and let's see, there's also kind of MPC-like function in here. So let's have this. So pressing timing will repeat, and I can use the velocity, the pressure to velocity. Let's just try an 8. Yeah, let's do that, or I could do 16. So I've just recorded essentially that sort of velocity pressure with the timing. So let's just do that, complete the whole thing. So and I missed out a bit, so I'll just do. Doubled that. Easy to erase. This is really easy. I'm just going to basically erase that track while I'm in stop mode. If I was playing, it would only erase for the time I've been playing. So let's. Bit too much swing on that. Let's just go. Bring the swing right down, maybe 2. So now I can record this. So I've just recorded that in there, and then. The memory is kind of where I leave it. So now if I'm playing here, I can go back to my previous. So you can see, I mean, I'm already really fast, able to kind of throw some patterns together, add a bit of variation, delete something, read something. The sequencer's actually really, it's only taken me a little bit of time to get used to it, and I have a very low tolerance for obscure workflows, and I'm finding this actually very creative and very inspiring. It's kind of almost like working with a looper, yet there's more flexibility and more tracks. There is one thing that is probably worth mentioning because it's quite easy to get a little bit kind of confused. So if I load this song here and I go to scene 1, very straightforward, you can see that all the patterns correspond to scene 1, and that means that when I come, if I'm just starting from sort of 0 and then I hit commit, it means that, so if I go now, I go to scene 2 or scene 3, you can see that the patterns all correspond with 3. So 3 matches, the pattern 3 matches up with the scene 3, and it just makes it a bit easier to manage and kind of get your head around. Otherwise you're kind of thinking about how on earth you would remember these things. This is quite a nice little groove here. Anyway, I digress. Let's get on to how we deal with the samples and what we can manipulate from that point of view. This is just a weird little riff I came up with. So we've got these various different sounds are all on these pads. So what can we do? So I don't like that one, so I press sound. We could just go through, I think there are about 700 sounds on them. That's an interesting one. So we can take that sound. What can we do to that sound? So we have amplitude and we have and pitch. Then we have additional sound factors, sound parameters. Pressing shift and sound starts these. So this one is whether it's one shot or as long as the key is down, or a legato. So if we were playing this over the keyboard, it would not re-trigger, but it would continue, so we'll come back out of there. Then we have, I think that pan control. Then we've got trim. So we can start point, an end point, not all that fine. Then we have envelope, attack, release. Then we have time stretch. So time stretch can be applied at BPM level or it can be applied at a bar levels. So we can have it, take it right down to, let's go back to the sound, and we can one shot. Not a great time stretch algorithm, but it's adequate. If we want to change, say we wanted to, we like that for some reason, and we wanted to take that pitch and we want to add it to another pad. We've got cut, copy and paste here. So if we just do copy that pad, go to this pad, paste that. So now I can change or they could be toms or whatever. So it's very easy. The cut and copy works at all levels. So you can cut and copy patterns, you can cut and copy bars, there's all sorts of events that we could do. So those are essentially the sort of sound mangling functions. So going to the effects, effects are global and they are sent via a send level for each a group level. You can't do it for each pad, but you can do it for each group. So I've got my groove here. I've set the fader to be going to effects. Couldn't find a way to synchronize the delay, so you have to do it by ear, but you can get some really short and interesting sort of zap delays, but it'd be really nice to be able to record that automation. Couldn't find a way to do that. The only automation you can record is via the fader. So next effects is reverb. goes from shortish colour up to this really sort of quite a nice washy sound. Next, distortion. Quite trashy. Then chorus. You go from a sort of slow and rich to a quite wobbly. And we can record actually these automations while we're at it. So if I want to record that movement, press and hold the record. And then if I want to record additional automations, I could go to, I don't know, what should we do? We could do release. I wonder what happens. Oh yeah, that's interesting. So we can have the global release for the group. Oh, that's nice. Anyway, I'll erase that. Next effect is the filter. Again, it's a send. We've got resonance. Let's just erase fader movement. And then we've got compression. Compression is a sort of, oh, let's go to release that. So can we erase the fader? I think we've done it. So now I'm just sending that into, let's just go, we'll send that into the compressor. We can really mash things up here. Let's maybe bring the bass in. Send that to the effect. Oh yeah, super crunchy. And I think that's the last one. Yeah, that's the end of the effects. Effects are actually really handy. I mean, like I say, it'd be nice to get access to some of those individual parameters for automation, because I love modulating the delay, but it works really nicely. And again, you know, we can automate stuff using the sequencer and the fader. Let's do a little bit of MIDI recordings. Right, so I've mixed things up a little bit here. What I wanted to do is kind of demonstrate a bit more about what happens when we use it as a MIDI recorder only. So what does it do? How can it work? So what I've got is, I've got a longer keyboard, I've got an MC101, which will give me polyphony stuff and extra multi-timbrality, and I'm running that in. So to begin with, I've got one track, I've gone to bank D, I've got this track here, which just goes to one specific MIDI channel, which is channel 2 in this case, which is the piano. So I've just got let's see, might have a little bit too much gain on the input. There we go. So now I can record that. So let's just go. So let's see what I'm going to do. Let's go 4 bars. But I mean, again, you know, I can go all the way up to a lot. And I can record this in different modes. So let's do 4. So timing. You see that's free time or quantized time, so it'll quantize to the quantized setting. Free, let's go for free and see if I can pull anything off. So I'm just going to play a bit of, well, let's see what else we can record in here. So I'm just going to overdub. Let's see it. I've got some. Let's have a look. See. Let's check. Right. Let's see if it'll record this CC control. Well, the answer is yes. So we get velocity, we get pitch bend, we get modulation, and we get CC control and polyphony. So there is more. As well as mapping the piano across this track, I've also added a couple of sort of drum sounds that are coming out of the MC101 as well. So by doing that, go sound, that's on MIDI channel 1, which is the drum channel, and the note. So what happens is this is just triggering on MIDI channel 1, sending on a specific note. So I can trigger drum sounds from MIDI as well. And there's one other thing. I've got a bass sound on here, which I've just noticed has aftertouch. So I'm just going to turn everything down and record. Let's see if that's recorded the aftertouch as well. Yes, records aftertouch too. Nice. So now we can start getting into some of these insert effects with a whole new other set of effects that we can apply. These are designed to be kind of real time. So if I just go press my track, let's just maybe crunch that up a bit more. What I do is I press and I hold. So let's do, this is a modulation. Pitch. That sounds like a repeat. We can combine more than one of these actually. High pass filter, low pass filter. Can have, you know, that sounds like a bit crusher. It doesn't apply to the input, but it applies to all of the stuff that's playing back. So we can create additional performative stuff here with various different combinations. None of this stuff is recorded, but it's just for sort of real-time modification. And some of it works, some of it doesn't, some of it's kind of a bit hit and miss, but you find a sort of sweet spot, and that could be the one that just happens to work with what you want to do. So time for a few reality checks. There are a couple of things which are going to be limiting to some people. You might think, wow, I can do almost everything on this. Bear in mind, there are only 12 voice polyphony. So across those 48 tracks, you can only have 12 sounds at a time playing. And that is only mono. If you're using stereo samples, that's 2 voices. So there are those limitations to work with that you have to consider. Also, no song mode. Be really nice if there was some kind of song mode to sequence those scenes. I mean, I understand there's no interface for it, and I suppose you can still do that. It means that you actually have to, you know, get your hands on and perform with it. Also, be nice to get access to some of those like effects parameters for automation. But again, we can always just sample it, reuse it, or, you know, learn how to perform it properly. And the other thing to remember is that anything you do on this unit is saved in real time to the current project pattern or sound. So if you've got like a starting point for a live set, for instance, that you manipulate in real time, by the end of the night, that will be the data that is in the project. So you'll need to save your starting point. It would be lovely if there was a way to have a kind of revert to last save state, but it's sort of, I don't know whether that's viable because the whole kind of memory works on currently whatever is live is written. I mean, the bottom line is, though, it sounds good. You know, it really does have a good sound. That kind of, the output stage and the compression just really kind of is vibey, you know, and I've heard it on PA systems and it sounds really beefy and enjoyable. So for me, big thumbs up for Teenage Engineering. I think they've got this absolutely right, you know, and I have a very low tolerance for obscure workflows. You may remember the piece I shot with Gaz and the OPX, and it really wound me up, whereas I think they've got this about right here, and it feels like a very frictionless and enjoyable way to work. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, I just want to mention our Patreon. Of course, we have all of our stuff goes up there ad-free. If you want to watch there, there's also exclusive videos and sound sets. I'll post some samples and maybe some loops of this for our Patreon users. But thanks very much for watching. That was the Teenage Engineering KO2, or Knockout 2. See you next time.